Inside America's most dangerous prisons, loyalty isn't earned, it's bled for. Hidden rituals, coded oaths, and violent initiations have shaped prison gangs into some of the deadliest criminal organizations in the country. Today we peel back the concrete walls to reveal how these groups recruit, test, punish, and control their members, through traditions so brutal, they were never meant to be spoken outside. This is the real meaning of blood in, blood out. Before we dive into the rituals, the stabbing tests, the coded life-or-death promises that define America's prison gangs, you have to understand something. These organizations didn't start as criminal empires. They started as survival groups. Prisons in the 1950s and 60s, especially in states like California, Texas, and New York, were pressure cookers of violence. Cells packed with twice the intended population. Segregated yards where racial hostility simmered every day. Guards outnumbered and overwhelmed, often watching from a distance as inmate-on-inmate violence unfolded. New prisoners, especially the young, the small, or the unconnected, were immediate targets. Assaults, robbery, predatory behavior. It was every man for himself, until groups formed. The earliest prison gangs, like the Mexican Mafia, 1957, the Aryan Brotherhood, 1964, and the Black Guerrilla Family, 1966, weren't originally founded to run drug markets or dominate entire states. They were founded because inmates needed protection from the chaos. But something else happened. Once these groups formed, once they created a sense of belonging and power inside a system where most inmates felt helpless, the gangs evolved. They built constitutions, codes, hierarchies, and existential loyalties. They developed rituals, deeply symbolic and deeply violent practices that bound members together for life. This is where blood in, blood out began. The phrase became famous because it perfectly expressed something universal across all major prison gangs. If you want to join, shed blood. If you want to leave, shed more, usually your own. Let's rewind to one of the earliest documented origin points. When the Mexican Mafia, LAIM, formed in the late 1950s at Dual Vocational Institution, they were surrounded by hostile rival groups. Early members realized they needed undying loyalty and absolute commitment, not just friendships or alliances. So they borrowed ideas from old street gangs, military traditions, and even ancient warrior cultures. They established the first known use of violent initiations inside California's prison system. A recruit had to prove he was willing to commit violence on command. No hesitation. No fear. No second thoughts. He might be ordered to stab a rival, assault a guard, carry out retaliation for an insult that happened weeks earlier. This wasn't just about brutality, it was about trust. The founders believed, if he'll bleed for us once, he'll bleed for us always. The Aryan Brotherhood, founded less than a decade later, adopted their own version. AB recruits had to demonstrate unwavering racial loyalty, a willingness to kill, and an oath that was closer to a warrior's creed than a street gang's handshake. For early members, it wasn't a gang, it was a brotherhood designed to outlive prison sentences, outlive riots, outlive death. The Black Guerrilla Family took an entirely different approach. Born out of political ideology and the writings of George Jackson, BGF required recruits to study revolutionary texts, demonstrate discipline, and dedicate themselves to a political cause. Yet even here, violence became part of initiation because prison conditions demanded it. A brother who could not fight, or would not, was a liability. Different origins, different philosophies, same rule. Once you're in for life. Leaving is punishable by death. But why such extremes? Why did these groups need blood to seal new membership? Because in prison, betrayal is always one sentence away. A snitch can destroy an entire gang line. A coward can get another member killed. A weak link can collapse a whole operation. The gangs realized early that loyalty wasn't words. It wasn't promises. It had to be proven with irreversible action. Once someone crossed the line, stabbed at the command of the gang, they were fully committed. There was no turning back. No second chance at a normal life. This created a psychological and emotional bond that rivaled military combat units. And as the decades passed, these rituals grew more complex. By the 1970s and 80s, prison gangs had transformed into sophisticated criminal organizations that required not just violence, but discipline, intelligence, strategy, and secrecy. Initiations weren't just tests, they were ceremonies, blood oaths, contracts carved into flesh rather than signed on paper. And the system worked. Because by the time a recruit completed the ritual, he wasn't just a member. He was owned. In the chapters to come, we'll break down these rituals in detail. The different types of initiations used across major U.S. prison gangs. Why recruits are selected the way they are. The coded language used during oaths. The evolution from stabbings to structured missions. How blood rituals differ between gangs and regions. The psychological effect on the inmate and the system. And why leaving often means death. Each chapter will go deeper into real documented cases from prisons across California, Texas, Arizona, and beyond. This world is hidden for a reason. These rituals are rarely talked about openly, but they define the structure and power of America's most dangerous prison gangs. And to understand them, you must first understand the sacrifices demanded at the door. Blood in, blood out. There is no other way. To understand the blood in, blood out philosophy, you need to understand how a prison gang chooses its soldiers. Because recruitment inside U.S. prisons is not accidental, strategic, calculated, sometimes planned years in advance. Most people imagine gang initiations as spontaneous acts. Someone stabs a rival and suddenly they're in the gang. But that's Hollywood. In reality, America's biggest prison gangs, including the Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, Texas Syndicate, Black Guerrilla Family, and Ceremonies, run their recruitment like elite military units. Candidates aren't accepted because they're violent. Violence is common in prison. What matters is utility. To a prison gang, every new member is an investment. A liability if chosen wrong. A weapon if chosen right. The first filter, where you come from. Before anyone can be considered, they must pass the first and most rigid barrier, racial and regional politics. In California and Texas prisons, this rule is absolute. It's not negotiable. It's not bendable. It is enforced through violence. The Aryan Brotherhood only recruits white inmates. The Mexican Mafia recruits Latinos, primarily those affiliated with Ceremonies. The Black Guerrilla Family recruits black inmates, usually those with political alignment. MS-13, Tango Blast, and Texas Syndicate recruit based on nationality or region. Norteños and Nuestra Familia recruit Latinos from Northern California. These lines are so firm that violation is considered a political threat. And in prison, politics are enforced with blood. The watching period. Months or years of observation. The idea that someone is invited to join a gang after a single act of violence is a myth. In truth, the observation phase is long and meticulous. Gang leaders watch an inmate for temperament. Are they impulsive or controlled? Discipline. Do they follow orders? Violence capability. Can they fight, stab, or carry out missions without hesitation? Steadiness under pressure. Do they break down during lockdowns? Drug use. Too much addiction makes them unreliable. Debts. Owing money is a weakness that can be exploited by others. Snitch potential. Have they ever cooperated with staff? Paperwork. This is critical. Every major U.S. prison gang requires paperwork checks. This means the candidate's criminal history, police reports, trial transcripts, and county jail files are reviewed. Anyone with sexual offenses, child abuse, cooperation with law enforcement, weak charges, past betrayal, is immediately disqualified, often violently. This level of screening makes the gangs incredibly selective. Some candidates are watched quietly for years before they even realize they are being evaluated. The first contact, an invitation that isn't really an invitation. Contrary to popular belief, you don't walk up and ask to join a prison gang. That's an instant sign you're not ready. If leaders believe someone is useful, they approach the inmate, but subtly. Might start with permission to work out in a certain area, access to group-protected tables during chow, small tasks like delivering messages, invitations to talk on the yard, being asked to hold steel, carry a weapon, being included in political discussions. These small steps are tests. If the candidate fails any of them, the process ends quietly, and often permanently. The tasks before the test. Before an inmate is allowed to take part in a violent initiation, they must prove they can handle responsibility. Typical pre-initiation tasks include running kites between buildings, holding contraband during searches, collecting debts from weaker inmates, standing guard during a gang operation, researching another inmate's paperwork, smuggling food or supplies through job assignments, memorizing rules, codes, and hand signals, maintaining silence during investigations. These tasks might seem simple, but each one tests a different trait: loyalty, discipline, intelligence, discretion, resourcefulness. Only after a candidate passes these tests is he considered on the books. The mission, blood in. Once a candidate proves himself, the real initiation begins, and it's never random. Prison gangs do not waste blood. Every initiation mission serves a purpose. Depending on the gang, the candidate may be ordered to assault a rival gang member, eliminate a threat, punish a snitch, stab someone who owes a debt, retaliate for disrespect, carry out a multi-man coordinated attack, deliver violence on the yard during a specific window, ambush someone in showers or blind spots. The mission is designed to test two things above all. 1. Can the recruit kill if ordered? 2. Can they keep their mouth shut afterward? Silence is the true currency of prison gangs. Many initiations are carried out where guards have limited visibility, behind stairwells, in showers, in industrial kitchens, or during yard fog. But even then, the recruit risks life sentences for attempted murder. That risk is the point. Once someone carries out their first mission, they are bonded to the gang forever, not by loyalty but by guilt and shared violence. This is why leaving is impossible. A man who shed blood for the gang knows too much. He's an insider, a liability, a witness to things that can't reach parole boards or courtrooms. The ceremony afterward, not what you expect. Most people imagine a ritual, a chant, or some dramatic oath. But in reality, prison gangs avoid anything ceremonial that could be used in court. Instead, the acceptance is quiet, subtle, almost invisible. A nod from a high-ranking member, a handshake with a specific grip, a message passed through a kite, he's good. Access to a different area of the yard the next day, a shared meal, a knife handed back to him, for next time. That quiet acceptance is the real ritual. Because inside, silence means more than words. The gang acknowledges him. He acknowledges the gang. Blood has been spilled. Commitment has been proven. The door has closed behind him forever. Before someone is ever asked to put in work, they're shaped, molded, and conditioned, not just to commit violence, but to commit violence for a cause. This is the making of a soldier. And in the next chapter, we dive into the most secretive part of these organizations. The actual rituals, codes, and symbolic practices used by America's most powerful prison gangs. Rituals designed to bind men for life. Rituals, oaths, and the secret ceremonies behind prison gang membership. Because once a prison gang selects a candidate and once that candidate proves himself through violence, the next phase begins. The ritual. Not the Hollywood ritual. Not the ceremonial, tattooed, torchlit fantasy. But the real, documented, rarely discussed initiation practices that have shaped America's deadliest prison gangs for decades. These rituals differ from gang to gang, state to state, but they all share one purpose: to erase the identity the inmate walked into prison with, and replace it with the identity the gang needs him to have. And it starts with something most people don't expect. The silence ritual, the first real test of loyalty. Contrary to popular belief, many prison gangs do not begin their rituals with violence. They begin with silence. Once a recruit successfully carries out his initiation mission, whether it's a stabbing, an assault, or a coordinated attack, the next step is to say nothing. He must not brag, not explain, not show fear, not confide in cellmates, not talk during medical checks, not react during interrogations. Silence is the first true oath. Many gangs refer to it as closing the book, going dark, being sealed. The gang watches closely. If a recruit talks, if he slips up even once, he's done. And done in this context usually means hospitalized or killed. This silence ritual is so essential that former investigators have described it as the foundation of all major prison gangs' power. Information is survival. Loose lips are death. The blood mandate, violence as a sacrament. After the silence is proven, the ritual deepens. Different gangs use different methods, but they all revolve around the same element. The recruit must willingly spill blood, and willingly risk his own. How the Mexican Mafia does it, documented history. LAIM often requires recruits to participate in a sanctioned hit, assault, or stabbing before being recognized as a carnal brother. But the ceremony afterward is quiet, subtle, almost businesslike. The weapon is returned to the gang. The recruit is evaluated for composure. A senior member acknowledges him, not verbally but with a nod or a coded phrase. His name is entered into the gang's roll call, usually a handwritten list or memory-based registry. There is no handshake, no celebration, no applause, just acceptance. How the Aryan Brotherhood does it, historical cases. AB rituals are more structured. Once a recruit carries out a hit, he may undergo a symbolic acknowledgement called making your bones. A meeting with senior members inside a cell or yard corner. A recitation of loyalty principles. Simple, coded, often memorized. A quiet vote among members. A physical token of brotherhood, not always but documented in cases. AB is known for literal blood binding. Some former members described making small cuts on their arms, mixing blood as symbolic unity, though this practice varies and is not universal. How the Black Guerrilla family did it, historical accounts. BGF is the only major prison gang with political oath-taking as part of their origins. Rituals involved. Commitments to revolutionary ideology. Study of George Jackson's writings. Memorization of key political and philosophical principles. Participation in violence as an act of movement protection. Violence wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. The code ceremony, what you can never do. Every major prison gang has a code, whether written, spoken, or passed down through memory. For example, Mexican Mafia code includes no informing to authorities, no cowardice, no disrespect to fellow members, no victimization of children or women, mandatory retaliation for betrayal, lifelong allegiance. AB code includes absolute racial loyalty, total secrecy, no association with informants, mandatory participation in hits when ordered, commitment to the brotherhood beyond prison walls. BGF code includes political discipline, loyalty to leadership, commitment to revolutionary ideology, absolute secrecy, mandatory defense of the organization. These codes are not read aloud in full during initiation. They are memorized over time, taught through mentorship, reinforced through discipline, and tested through missions. The final step, being claimed. Once all parts of the ritual are completed, the final moment arrives. The moment when the gang claims the recruit. In prison slang, this is often referred to as getting your stripes, being blessed, being made, being brought in, becoming official. There is no formal ceremony, no gathering, no spectacle. Ceremonies are liabilities. Instead, the final acceptance is almost always simple. A leader or shot caller says, "He's good," or "He rides with us," or "He's solid." Just 3 words can change an inmate's life forever. From that moment forward, the recruit is no longer an individual. He is part of a machine, a soldier, a name in a network that stretches through decades of violence, dozens of prisons, and hundreds of criminal operations. This final step is irreversible. There is no quitting, no walking away, no retirement. Blood in, blood out. The psychology of the ritual, what it does to a man. These rituals do more than bind loyalty. They rewire a person's identity. Because a man who has stabbed on command, kept silent under pressure, accepted a life sentence risk, pledged loyalty under threat of death, been embraced by a powerful prison brotherhood, is no longer the same man who entered prison months or years earlier. Gang psychologists and correctional investigators say the same thing. Initiation rituals don't just test loyalty, they create it. The identity shift is so strong that many men say being accepted into a gang was the first time they ever felt valued, protected, respected, feared, important, useful, part of something bigger. That emotional bond is harder to break than iron bars. The rituals are only the beginning. You now understand the hidden reality behind America's prison gang initiation rituals. Months or years of observation, strategic recruitment, the silence test, the blood mandate, coded indoctrination, symbolic acceptance. But this is only the beginning. Because once a man is inside, the rules change. The expectations increase. The violence intensifies. The loyalty demands grow. And the consequences become deadlier. In the next chapters we will expose what it truly means to live under gang command. The punishments for breaking rules. The politics that drive gang wars. And the few rare cases where someone tries to walk away. The deeper we go, the darker it gets.